Hello everyone, and welcome to our COVID-19 webinar. We decided to do this because of everything that's happened in the last couple of weeks and just how much time we've been spending providing people with information that they found quite useful on what's going on. A large part of what we do today will be going over information that some of you may know already and just giving our opinion on it. I do hope you find it useful. Our plan is to go over the impact on businesses that we've seen so far of COVID, the support that's available to you in summary, then look at the grants that are available for self-employed people, for businesses, and then look at furlough for employees and some of the questions that we're being asked quite a lot. I'm going to try and go through them quite quickly to allow a longer amount of time at the end for your questions, because I think that questions coming from you guys will be the most useful, because these are the things that are definitely on your mind. And I think if we can be answering the questions on your mind, that's better than us just telling you what's on ours. We've been keeping quite close to what's going on, and as much as possible in our business, it's been business as usual, except that we're looking daily at what the government are releasing, and the releases from them are daily, not just the press releases, but updates to their websites. And we're trying to read between the lines of what's being released and see if we can work out what it means for us, what it means for you. Okay, let's get going. So our plan is to go over that, and we'll start with business impact. Well, the impact of COVID is kind of obvious, really, at the start, in that there's a lot of people who've been unable to trade recently. The problems that we're having are that the government has shut down a large number of businesses and said you may not trade or you must not trade. And then those that are remaining open are affected because people who are staying at home are spending differently. There seems to be a lot more online deliveries coming down our street than usual. But to be honest, I wasn't spending much time at home before, so I'm not sure whether that is more than usual or just that I'm noticing it more than usual. So trade is definitely slowed. One thing that we are starting, we've just started it this week, is a project to look at how it has impacted our clients on a weekly basis over the last month and start to build a trend, compare it to last year, to the month before, and just see on the whole, how is this impacting our businesses? Once we've got that information, we'll share it with you. Productivity is a big one, certainly one that we've noticed in our business, is that it's really hard to get the balance right between working from home and looking after family at home. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. It certainly led to a little bit of stress for us in trying to work out the best times to work and things like that. But it's also released opportunities as well. For example, people seem to be taking time in the middle of the day to do things that suit them, but giving a little bit more in the evenings if that's a better time for them. And if we're able to find a working pattern that works better, who knows what will happen off the back of this? Maybe people will ask to work from home a little bit more in the future. Is that good? Is that bad? Time will tell on that one, I think, but certainly for us, keeping the team productive, but also socially connected has been an important part of our COVID plan. Keeping the team connected via apps like Teams, Facebook, and just trying to replace the kind of jolly office atmosphere with jolly online content instead. The other impact that we've noticed for clients is cash flow. Almost immediately, every time there's a new announcement, it seems every Monday a new announcement. We did get through a Monday this week without a new announcement, which is fantastic. But every time there is one, cash flow seems to dry up a little bit for people. People take a little bit longer to pay their bills. And people, people are paying bills a little bit slower. People are keeping cash a little bit more. What are they doing with it? Well, I think that they're just paying down their loans a little bit, paying off savings, paying off loans and increasing the money that's in their bank. Hopefully, before long, that money will start flowing again, because it would be nice to see trade continue. That's business impact. We're going to give you more on that as we kind of do our research and we're able to tell you more interesting insights. Let's get into what I'm sure you've come for. I have lost control of the slides, so I'm not sure whether Kate might be able to just flip us back to the slideshow. Thanks, by the way, to Kate, who's supporting me, and Diana, who's in the background as well, just in case something goes terribly wrong with my computer. Diana's here to entertain you whilst I get it sorted. So the support that's available to you is in the form of loans and grants, and they are really different. Loans you've got to pay back and grants you don't. So it's important that you know what you're taking before you take it. And with each of these schemes being given a fun name that makes it sound positive, sometimes it's hiding the negative that you do need to pay it back. And it could just be storing up a problem for the future. I'll cover that on the ones that I'm most concerned about. Before we go on to those, I'd like to draw your attention to this website, www.businesssupport.gov.uk. It looks to me to be brand new, or at least I have not seen it before. And it's got some fantastic resources on it. I'll just load it up if you haven't seen it. Or at least I'll try it. I'll tell you what, I'll load it up once I've gone through my slides, because otherwise it will spoil the surprise. Not that this will be a surprise for you. There's grants available. The grants available are for self-employed people, for rates-paying businesses, and for furlough of employees. We're going to cover those in more detail later. But then there's loans. The first loan I'd like to talk about is the self-assessment deferral loan. This is the second payment on account for 2019-20. It's a payment that's normally due in July 2020. So if you normally pay tax in July 2020, payment of that can be deferred until January 2021. It's an automatic grant, it's an automatic deferral that is granted by HMRC. There's no need for you to tell them. So if you normally pay in July, you do not have to. Obviously you still can, but you do not have to. The payments made in July are the second payment on account. So that's an estimate of the tax that's due by the 31st of January 2021 for the year that ends March 2020. So you get to March 2020, you calculate your tax and you pay it by January 2021. But if you are due to pay more than £1,000, if you paid more than £1,000 last year, HMRC expect you to make 2 payments along the way. If you do this, you will have made one already in January 2020, and that will be for 50% of last year's tax bill. And you'll have paid that on top of the tax due for last year. The second payment, due in July, is again 50% of last year's bill, because HMRC think that's a good way of calculating approximately how much tax you'll have to pay by January 21. But hey, we can know exactly how much tax is due by January 2021, because that tax year finishes in less than a week's time. So my advice on this is, yeah, it's great to get that deferral from July to January, but let's calculate the exact amount of tax that's due by January 2021 and make sure we've already got it in the bank. It's an income tax based on earnings that we have made already. That money should be in the bank and we are able to know the exact amount due. So let's work it out. And then if you need to make a decision because you need that money for something else, you know what you are going to have to repay in January 21. We're going to be pushing over the next few weeks for people to get on with their personal tax returns. Obviously, yes, that's great for us because it means we can get the work done and I can keep the office open. But it's not just that, it's also you guys need to know your tax. The sooner you know your tax, the more you can use that information to help you make spending decisions. The next loan available, and I'm calling it a loan because it is a loan, is VAT deferral. HMRC are saying that if you're due to pay VAT between 20th of March and 30th of June 2020, you do not need to pay that until 31st of March 2021. So if your VAT return period ends February, March or April, if it's quarterly, or February, March and April, if you pay monthly, although I don't know many people who would choose to pay monthly. You can defer those payments until March 21. So effectively, that's the government loaning you the money for almost a year. You should submit your VAT return as normal on time. The VAT return submission to HMRC should not be late. The deferral of payment is automatically granted. There's no need to tell HMRC. Do make sure you cancel your direct debit. Otherwise, HMRC will take the money anyway by direct debit. The government advice is go onto your bank and cancel the direct debit through your online banking, because if you've told the bank that you don't want it to be paid, the bank will not release the money even if HMRC do ask for it. I think they've got so many computer systems to update at the moment that updating the direct debit system would just be a bridge too far, which they would need to do in the next couple of weeks. That's my gut feel on that one. So it's a deferral. Use it if you need it. There will be no interest or penalty for late payment up until 31st of March 2021. Time to pay. So this is a support that is a scheme available from HMRC designed to help people who cannot pay their taxes on time. It's a long-established scheme that was set up over 10 years ago, and the purpose of it is exactly that, to help people who are in need. But over the last 10, almost 15 years, HMRC's attitude has kind of changed from them offering quite generous support to begin with, to then having an attitude of what have you spent HMRC's money on, and almost being quite, I wouldn't say hostile, but making it quite difficult to borrow money from them when you can't afford to pay your taxes. The idea of the scheme is that if you do call and request time to pay, then you may be granted additional time with no interest or penalties. Excuse me, with no penalties. I think they do still charge interest, which is quite useful, especially, I'm going to flip back a slide. This VAT deferral only kicks in for current debts. So if you have old debts that you still have not paid, or PAYE debts that you have not paid, then you could use the time to pay scheme. I think that if you can demonstrate that coronavirus has impacted your business, hey, and who can't, then requesting and accessing time to pay should not be too tricky. Interestingly, HMRC have released an online form for self-assessment debts less than 10,000, and I think the idea of this is to reduce the burden on their phone lines. It implies to me that if your debt is less than 10,000, they want to agree instalments with you. Often those will be taken by direct debit, and they don't want you taking too much of their time on the phone. So I wonder whether they'll take that approach with small businesses calling with PAYE or VAT debts of less than 10,000. I wonder if they'll be just as willing to get you off the phone quickly if you can agree instalments and set up direct debit payment. The only trouble I'd have is if HMRC said to me, how much can you afford to pay? I think I'd need to say, I don't know. I don't know how much I can afford to pay right now, because I don't know how long this is going to go on for. If you're borrowing money from the government, and that's what all of these schemes are, when can you afford to pay it back? Will it be easier to pay back in September? Well, hopefully, businesses will hopefully be open again by then, but maybe not. What about Christmas? Will we be open and will we be back to normal by then? It's really tricky to know. So we need to just watch HMRC's attitude on this. Are they starting to commit people to payments in the next couple of months that will be just as unachievable as paying it now? So just look out for that. Equally, I think that as this drags on, and it will drag on, HMRC's attitude is likely to turn a little bit. I think they're likely to become less receptive to people who cannot pay. So it might be that the time to make an agreement with them is now. If you already know you have debts and that you will struggle to pay, get on with it, because I think at the moment they are giving quite a lot, and I believe over the next month or two we will start to see them put additional conditions in that make it more difficult for us to borrow money from the government. Speaking of borrowing money from the government, the final loan that I want to tell you about is the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme. From clients who have approached banks already, I understand it's very difficult to get this money, even though it is meant to be easy. But hey, if you do, you can borrow up to 5 million and pay it back over 6 years, and even better, the first 12 months of interest and any fees that the lender wants to charge up front will be covered by the government, if you can get it. It's a government-backed loan, although on all of the new websites the government are releasing, they're not talking about the fact that they are 80% backing the amount that you borrow, in that the lender is able to reclaim 80% from the government if you cannot pay. And I'm not sure why that is. It might be because the lenders are really pushing for a little bit more security from the individuals taking out the loans. Certainly, we've seen banks who are asking for 100% personal guarantee, even though it's a government-backed loan. So watch out for that. If you're borrowing and the bank is asking you to provide a personal guarantee on the full balance, it might be worth resisting that. If you're in that position and you're not sure, feel free to give us a call before you sign anything, and either us or one of the businesses that we're close to can give you a little bit of support going through that process. Equally, I think it's unlikely you'll be able to borrow 5 million if you don't have some good forecasts. So if you feel like you need that sort of money, get in touch with us. We'll make sure your business plan is sound, provide you with the accounts that you need to support your application, and off we go. If you've had contact with anyone with the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme and you know how the banks are approaching this, I'd really appreciate you letting us know. Finding out what your experience is helps us to advise the businesses that we work with. So do let us know. So that's the loans and the grants that are available. And don't forget this website where every one of the support mechanisms in place by the government, they're listed there. Okay, let's move on to grants for self-employed. This was announced last week. It's a grant of 80% of the profits that you make if you are self-employed, capped at £2,500 per month. Your profit will be based on the average profit from the last 3 tax returns you have submitted, or less than 3 if you're a new business. But that's from 1617 through to 1819. To apply to get this money, this grant, you must have profit less than 50,000, and your majority of your income, i.e. more than 50% of your income, must come from self-employment. That can either be in the 1819 tax year, or if you don't meet that condition in that specific year, maybe you do over the last 3 years. If you either have the majority of income from self-employment last year or over the 3 years, either or, then you may apply for this grant. What does self-employed mean? Self-employed means that you fill in a personal tax return, and that personal tax return has a self-employment page on it. If you are a company director and you effectively work for yourself, but through a company, a limited company, registered with Companies House, you are not self-employed. In those cases, you're a company director. You may, if you pay yourself via payroll, be able to access the furlough grant. We'll come on to that later. But this is only for people who fill in the self-employment pages on their tax return. If you're not sure, have a look at your tax return. It will be on there. It will say on there quite easily, easy to see within the calculations, income from self-assessment. If you haven't been making a profit, then unfortunately the grant is not available to you. If you've got questions on that, ask at the end. I'm sure you will, but I prefer to address your specific questions. So I'm going to move through the other grants as well. There are grants available to businesses. If you are able to claim small business rate relief, so you should be a ratepayer and you do get a rates bill every year for your business, a non-domestic rates bill from the local government, then you get up to 10,000, sorry, you get precisely £10,000 granted to you. That's for businesses that are able to claim small business rate relief or rural relief. If you are in retail, hospitality or leisure, and your rateable value is between 15,000 and 51,000, that's your rateable value, not your rates bill, and you'll be able to see your rateable value on your rates bill, then you can get up to 25,000 per property. I'd like to point out that there's a cut-off date for this. You need to have owned or leased the property on the 11th of March for these schemes to apply to you. So no point rushing out and getting some property now because you're too late on that one. There's also a rates holiday which is being put in place where retail, hospitality and leisure businesses and nurseries, I believe that's children nurseries rather than garden nurseries, will be able to, will not have to pay rates next year. The rates holiday is automatic and you should be receiving a bill from the local government for £0 very soon for that, if you haven't already seen it. The small business rate relief grant and the retail, hospitality and leisure grants, well, the government websites, and this is from the government website, you do not need to do anything. Your local authority will write to you if you're eligible, which is fantastic news. But they'll probably write to the rateable property, and since we're all working from home at the moment, it could take a while to see it. It feels to me like the government hasn't fully thought through that. So then a few days later, the local government website starts saying, okay, well, that's all very well, but we're going to need some form of application process on our website for you guys to tell us that you're entitled to this money. And so it looks like the local authorities will be releasing forms. Some have already done it, ours have not done this yet. But the central government funding will be made available to local councils on the 1st of April, so now. And I believe they'll be telling the local governments to get this money out to businesses as quickly as possible. Indeed, Somerset West and Taunton did release a website that said it will take them 7 days to process complete applications. However, I noticed that message has now come down from their website. I think it's come down. I can't find it now. I wanted to show you, but it seems to have gone. And that makes me wonder whether they've gone, oh, hang on, we've got to process quite a lot of forms here. It might take more than 7 days. It feels that they're under pressure to deliver quickly, but the reality of it is that it depends upon staffing and volume of applications. Therefore, let's get our applications in early. I noticed from the Somerset West and Taunton website that it's going offline Thursday evening until 11 PM. Maybe that's so they can release a new form. Maybe the online form will be with us on the 3rd of April. Maybe it will be available at 11:30 on Thursday, the 2nd of April. I know I'll be looking because I'd like to be first in line. With that in mind, I've got a copy of my rates bill to hand already, because I'm sure that one of the questions on the form will be, what's your account number? And so I'd like to have that. It might also ask things like, what's your rateable value? Who knows what this form will ask? I think it will be basic, but at the same time, I want to be prepared. So I've got my rates bill ready so I can fill that in. It's worth noting that there's a state aid limitation put in place for businesses within the European Union. Usually it's much lower than this, but for coronavirus related grants, the maximum you can have from your government in state aid is €800,000. I doubt that'll be a problem for many people, but if it is, give us a call and we'll put your fees up. Furloughed staff. Let's move on to furloughed staff. Furloughed staff must not work. That's a really important condition. And what is furlough? Furlough is where you say to your employees, I do not have work for you now. I would like to keep you on and give you more work in the future. In furlough for coronavirus, the government will give you a grant to cover some of the money that you have to pay to your staff. Well, sorry, all of the money that you pay to your staff with certain conditions. You can furlough people for a minimum of 3 weeks. So let's say from the 1st of April, you could do 3 weeks from that to a maximum of 3 months. However, that may be extended if the current conditions of not being able to go outside for anything other than essential journeys stay in place. You can be furloughed from the 1st of March, but that's subject to employment law. So what do we mean by this? Well, you have to have actually furloughed them. This is designed to say you cannot just say that somebody has been furloughed. You need to have some evidence that they were furloughed. I think that the government will be fairly relaxed with that, so long as it doesn't appear that people are taking the piss. But that's just gut feel. I don't think that HMRC want to stop this money from getting out to the public, to the employers, but they also want to stop people from taking advantage of this system. One of the mechanisms that they have put in place to stop people taking advantage is that employees must have been on the payroll at 28th of February 2020. So there's no point in adding yourself to the payroll in April and expecting to get furlough money if the employees weren't on the payroll at 28th of February. That will not be covered. This is a scheme that will be administered by HMRC. However, before moving on, it's separate to your payroll. Payroll must be completed as usual. You must decide how much money you're going to pay your employees, and we'll come on to that. And then you must complete your monthly returns to HMRC as usual. There will be a separate process for reclaiming this furlough grant from HMRC. So how much can you pay your employees whilst they're on furlough? Well, you can pay them whatever you want, but the grant that you'll receive from the government will be the lower of £2,500 a month, or 80% of your employee's regular wage. We'll come on to how that's calculated in just a moment. But then on top of that, you can claim the employer's national insurance, auto-enrolment pension contributions. This excludes fees, commissions and bonuses. So if you're paying your employees a bonus on top of their regular pay, that wouldn't be included. How would they know? Well, I guess if it's separated in a pay slip, it'd be pretty obvious that it's a bonus. Which brings me to the calculation. How are we going to calculate the 80%? Well, 80% will be in reference to one of the two things. Either the amount you earned in the same month last year, or an average of your earnings in 2019-20. I must just say, if somebody is on a salary, if someone's on a salary, then they can just have their salaried amount times 80%. These two calculations are for when someone has a varying wage, for example, hourly paid staff. Average monthly earnings in 2019-20 is taken into account that some people start halfway through the year, partway through the year, and if you start partway through the year, then the calculation will be prorated accordingly. So if you only worked in February, then they would take your earnings in the month and they would divide it by 1 for 1 month, because that's the number of months that you worked in the year. To help businesses with this, we've created a spreadsheet that will do the calculations, and we'll be using that to calculate the amounts payable, and we'll also be providing a form that you can give to your employees to tell them how much they will be earning whilst they're on furlough. So these are services that we're just developing now. And once we've got them developed into a package that we're happy to share with you, we'll tell you more about them. But we want to try and make it as easy as possible for you to furlough employees, keep them informed of how much they will earn, and get some reassurance that the amount that you are paying them will be covered by the government scheme. Of course, you can pay them, excuse me, I've said that already. Complications, February payments we've done, statutory sick pay. If someone's on statutory sick pay because you've sent them home because they should not work, then they get 2 weeks SSP. So let's remember that's an additional grant available to you. If you've sent people home during during March, and you've told them not to work because they're poorly and you want them to self-isolate, then you can reclaim that SSP from the government, and you can also pay them from the first day that they're off sick. If someone's been on maternity over the last year, then the calculation that we are doing, and this is just a guess at the moment because it's not incredibly clear, but the calculation we've been doing are for the average monthly earnings for the period whether the employee was employed normally, and then we've excluded the time that they were on maternity leave from our calculations. So if you were employed in April and May and then went on maternity leave in June, then we've taken your earnings for April and May and divided by 2. That's how we're doing at the moment, but there's no guidance that we have seen that gives enough information of exactly how it will be that HMRC would like it calculated. Hopefully they'll be quite lenient because the guidance is so new and people are being furloughed already, but we will see. What about directors? So if we have a company with one director, nobody else in the business, and they are the single employee on the payroll, they must be on the payroll from the 28th of February. There's nothing within the guidance we've been given that says they cannot be furloughed. However, furlough means that you must not work. Well, if you're the only employee of the business and the only director of the business, and you furlough yourself, how do you ever decide that you are going to unfurlough yourself? How do you keep the business running in the meantime? Well, in theory, you're not supposed to. That's the whole point. If you cannot run your business because of coronavirus, then stop and claim this grant. It's unclear whether the government will be forgiving of people who do just check in on their emails every now and again to make sure that nothing has gone drastically wrong. But our advice would be to make a decision before you go on furlough that you're going to do this. And then maybe contact your normal customers and suppliers and make it very clear to them beforehand that you will not be available for 3 weeks. And just try and minimize the number of disasters that there are for you to deal with in that period. The minimum length of a furlough is 3 weeks, and you can have more than one furlough. So you may choose to furlough yourself for 3 weeks, have a board meeting before you go on furlough to decide that it will be 3 weeks long, so you're not deciding whilst on furlough that you're coming back. And in 3 weeks' time, pop your head up, see what it looks like, and then decide whether you want to furlough yourself again immediately or not. At the moment, it feels like that would work. There's no guidance to say it wouldn't. Hopefully, we'll get a little more clarity soon. So if you do furlough staff, you pay them as normal, and you make your submissions to HMRC, or if we're doing your payroll, we will make your monthly tax returns for payroll to HMRC as normal. And there'll be the same conditions that they must be the tax return must be delivered on the day that you pay your employees, otherwise you may be liable to a £100 penalty per month. So we do need to keep on top of payroll, which is bad news for Wendy in our payroll department, because that means she cannot be furloughed. Excuse me, and then we're expecting a new web portal from HMRC to allow us to tell them how much money has been paid to people on furlough and how much grant we want back. That should be available by the end of May, and if that's the case, hopefully payments will come out, end of April. That being the case, hopefully payments will come out in May. It's not ready yet though, and until it is, the money isn't yours. And so you've got to pay your employees out of money that does not exist potentially. How's that going to work? Well, the government is saying fall back on the CBILS, the coronavirus business interruption loan scheme. Essentially go to your bank and ask for some short-term money whilst this grant's on its way. There's likely to be compliance checks from HMRC as well. I doubt that they will happen before the money is gifted or granted. However, I'm not sure how long it will take before we've seen the last of this. Is it possible that HMRC will try and reclaim money from businesses that try and take advantage? I certainly hope so, if people are really taking advantage and cheating the system. Although hopefully the guidance will be in place beforehand that means that it's very clear what we can and cannot do. That being the case, people won't take advantage and they can keep the scheme as generous as possible for everyone. So that's the information I wanted to give you. It is quite high level to allow for you to ask questions. I'm now going to ask you whether you have any questions. You should see within your screens a question and answer section. Oh, fantastic. And we've had questions already. And Diana's been answering them. This is brilliant. Thanks very much. So we've had a question come in from Jason. Jason saying, thanks for the update. I just wanted to ask, although unlikely, are there any grants available to new businesses in e-commerce, photography, English language, online training? Oh, and Diana's replying. Cheers, Diana. I hope you're going to say what I say, which is no, I don't think so, Jason. I think there's going to be a whole load of new e-commerce businesses. People try and make money from home, but I haven't seen any. I haven't seen any grants there that would be of specific help to you, but we'll keep our ear to the ground, and if anything comes up, we'll let you know. A lot of this support is for businesses that are established. Equally, that there's quite a few businesses that have only been set up in the last month or two. and they're not going to get much support either, unfortunately. So have we got any other questions? Hopefully you guys can see that there's a question and answer panel. I'm just having a look through the questions that are coming up. Is it reasonable to furlough one director and let another continue to check emails but not do any actual physical work? I've heard so many different definitions on, well, definitions, opinions is a better word, on what it means to be furloughed or not. I've heard people say if you're not selling, then you're not working. And if you're just keeping an eye on the admin in the background, kind of caretaking for the business rather than actually running it, maybe that will be okay. But it's a maybe because we haven't a guidance. I've seen other people who've said you must not do anything. You must do absolutely nothing in order to comply and be able to reasonably claim the furlough grant. It's really unclear. I've had people asking for local council websites. I haven't seen any information for South Somerset, but if I'm honest, I haven't been looking. My focus has been on the Taunton, Southwestern Taunton website. I'm not sure who's asked that question. They're anonymous and it hasn't been published, so it's a private message. If you do fancy just putting your name in, then I can make sure that we get an answer to you. We'll look at the South Somerset website and we can let you know what we see. Hopefully you guys, do you have to make PAYE contribution this month? So PAYE taxes, like any other taxes, are still due. If you cannot pay, then you should call the coronavirus helpline and ask for time to pay. That's the best way of getting support. I'm going to give you a little shortcut to that website again because it's got all of the different support mechanisms are on there, so that should help you with finding the phone numbers for time to pay. But yeah, taxes are still due, so PAYE is still due, VAT is still due. If you cannot pay, do tell HMRC. In the end of the day, the worst they can do is say, okay. I'm not sure whether the enforcement team are out. If they are, what are they going to do? They could knock on your door, I suppose, but presumably you're not in the business premises. So communicate. I think communication will be the key to getting through this. Be on the same team as HMRC because it feels like they want to be on the same team as us. There was another question that I saw, but it's disappeared again. Can someone be let go at the end of the furlough? Yes, you can furlough somebody, and then once we come through this this period, at the end of it, you can make an assessment as to whether you wish to run your business in the same way as you did before or not. That might mean closing. It might mean changing the services that you offer. If you do either of those things, then redundancy at that point is possible. So yes, you can furlough somebody and then let them go at the end. Equally, if you have just made somebody redundant, you can take them back on. If you made them redundant during March, you can take them back on and furlough them. That's an exception that is allowed by the government. If someone has chosen to leave, though, you cannot then take them back on because they would not be an employee, presumably. I suppose if they were on the payroll at 28th of February and they didn't resign in writing, who would know, I suppose. Difficult to say on that one because the guidance isn't clear enough. So I guess my advice there would be to seek further advice. If you've got someone in that position, ask me and I'll provide you with specific advice rather than this general advice. Kate's asking questions. Will the government postpone reverse charge VAT implication? Will the government postpone reverse charge VAT implementation in October for construction industry? So if you're in the construction industry, there's going to be a requirement that your customer pays VAT on your behalf for certain businesses. I haven't seen that that's being deferred, but I have seen that making tax digital requirements that were due to come in April this year have been deferred for a further year. At this point, I don't know, I'm afraid. But if I find out, I'll let you know in another update next week. Mark has asked, VAT, submit return and then defer payment. Yes, exactly. Submit the return, cancel your direct debit if you pay by direct debit, and then do not pay until you're ready to pay. There's an argument that you should be holding the money in the bank and making sure you're paying your creditors fairly rather than paying HMRC first. So yeah, keep the money in your bank, decide when you're ready to pay it, and then make the payment. Make sure you've got funds to see you through this period. That's why you're being offered the deferral from HMRC, to help you through this period. We have a self-employed chap working for us. He's working full-time and needs to go on the books next month. Are we protected if we need to furlough him in the future? I'm afraid if someone is not on the books as an employee already, they do not qualify for the furlough scheme, the furlough grant scheme. So you can still furlough them and you can pay them whatever you want during that period, but the money will not be due back to you from HMRC, I'm afraid. Yeah, and again, PAYE, submit as usual. You can pay full salary if you want to, or you can pay 80%, or you can pay less. But you will only get up to 80% back from HMRC under the furlough grant. So if you pay them their full salary, you will not get the full salary back from HMRC. You will get 80%. Okay, last call for questions. Whilst we just wait in case there's any last questions, I'll let you know. My intention is to do this again next week and keep doing it weekly whilst things develop. If things slow down, I'll slow down. But in the meantime, I've already got ideas about what I want to talk about next week, which will include cash flow planning, and maybe a little bit on bookkeeping and admin tasks we can be doing at home whilst we're at home. Hoping to give you some useful information, and we'll see what Boris says. If Boris gives us something new to work with, we'll let you know about that as well. We should be making grant applications for the small business rate relief in the next week. So if those start coming through, we'll let you know how it's going. We'll let you know if anyone's had their money yet, so that you know whether you are the one who hasn't received it when everyone else has, or whether you've received it and everyone else is waiting. Please keep letting me know if you find out information, because it's really useful. Tweet it or something and copy me in, and then I'll retweet it for you. But it'd be super useful to know what you guys are finding on this. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you everyone for watching. I'm kind of surprised that anyone did tune in. It means a lot that you did, and I hope you found it useful. If you did, let me know. It would be really helpful to know. It would also be really helpful to know if there's anything that you would see done differently, so that I can make these as useful as possible. Sorry for keeping you a bit longer than I planned to. It's now coming up for 12:45, and see you soon. Cheers. Bye.